Hello and greetings. We're so glad and happy that you're able to join us this evening with Covenant Calendar Club. We pray that you are richly blessed, that you will receive insight and inspiration from the words that you're about to receive. We ask that our Father speak to us through our teachers and that we have eyes to see and ears to hear. We'd like to give you a big, loud welcome.
Welcome.
Hey,
Hello,
hallelujah.
hello everyone.
Greetings from the Osha.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.
Hello.
Glad you're here. Okay, let's go ahead and turn the screen over to our presenters this evening.
Okay, Vivian is going to help me tonight. This study is one of my favorites. I'm excited. I'm really excited to be doing this one. It's got some incredible information in it. Every time I read it, it just renews me, my fervor of the message of what Yahuwah has given us. Are you ready, Vivian?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, keep your mic on.
Okay.
Creation's first Tekufah. Who declared the DNA in Shanae? And that will be found in Genesis 1:14. And for those that are new to these studies, I use the word cycle, and I use it to designate a 24-hour period for dawn to dawn. And the reason I use cycle is because the word day is very ambiguous and it's inaccurate. And I've had too many arguments about people saying, well, it's got to be the day or it's got to be the night or whatever. So I use the word cycle, and that declares a 24-hour period and eliminates all confusion. So I hope you're able to catch on to that and go along with it. Go ahead, Vivian, if you can read a few slides for me.
Okay. Where would one expect to find ultra pertinent calendar instructions in a guide for life? Where? In 1,700 years after an introduction, reference Joseph's prophetic dream, which is first mention of the moon in the Bible, or at creation's establishment. I go for creation.
Yes. Go ahead, Vivian.
Okay. Scripture records in Genesis 1:16 that Yahweh created two great lights. The word bara is create, is not seen in cycles 2, 3, or 4 during creation. The factor exposes that these two great lights were created on the first cycle, which, as it is written, Genesis 1:1. It was on cycle 4 that these two luminaries identifies. Okay, I have to put the pictures down a little bit here because I'm missing some words. Okay, the two luminaries' identities were given, their commissions to deliver light to the inhabitants that were to live on this earth. The sun orb was designed to support life in all living organisms on this earth. The Mazzaroth reveals its silent storyline, the plan of salvation to the earth. The Mazzaroth, historic to future, was designed to provide light, timing, instruction, inspiration, hope, and strength.
Jeremiah 31:35 gives declaration for the two great light givers. Thus saith Yahuwah, which giveth the sun for a light by day. There's number one light giver. And of the stars for a light by night. There is your number two light giver.
Yes.
What does Job reveal about the moon? See, even the moon does not shine, and the stars have not been flawless in his eyes. Job 25:5. In the scriptures, the very first mention of a year is found in Genesis 1:14. The Hebrew word is 8141, shaneh. The reason for looking at this word is to determine if shaneh has a lunar or a Tekufah connection for determining Yahuwah's Moedim. 1 Corinthians 14:33. For Yahuwah is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all churches of the saints. Is it somehow possible that Yahuwah positively identified the design of his worship year right from the start, from creation? Now, the moon has not been identified up until Joseph's dream, or not mentioned, I should say, up until Joseph's dream. So if this verse in Corinthians is correct, that Yahuwah is not the author of confusion, I'm wondering if before the moon was mentioned, would there not have been confusion up to that point? How would they know how to start the new year if the moon hadn't even been mentioned in the scriptures up until Joseph's dream? Go ahead, Vivian.
Okay. Shaneh is in the Hebrew, it's 8141 in the concordance. Will the lunar system of worship exactly reflect the Hebrew definition? Will Shaneh exemplify the scriptural Tekufah, Equinox, which system of worship will fulfill through absolute perfection Yahweh's commandments, okay, Yahweh's commands, the Torah, statutes, the Hebrew word definition. Then it goes on, okay.
And I wrote there through absolute perfection because Yahuwah is absolute perfection, nothing less, and he demands absolute perfection. So what he creates, what he designs, and what he stipulates will be perfection. There will be no convolution whatsoever. Shaneh. Is there a scriptural reference or two that links Shaneh with a lunar year? Is it even possible that someone can find the scriptural Hebrew word that by definition perfectly describes a lunar year? I'm going to read that sentence one more time because I want everyone here to think about that really closely. Is it even possible that someone can find a scriptural Hebrew word that by definition perfectly describes a lunar year? I'm hoping somebody can do that because I have not been able to find one myself. There are two witnesses directly linking Shaneh 8141 with the Tekufah. Exodus 34:22. And perform the festival of weeks for yourself, of the first fruits of the wheat harvest, and a festival of ingathering at the turn, and that word is 86:22, Tekufah, at the turn of the year, and that word is 8141, Shaneh. That edition is from the scriptures. Let's look at the KJV edition. And thou shalt observe the feast of weeks of the first fruits of the wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering at the year's end. And you see the word for year again is Shaneh, and the word for end is Tekufah. Exodus 34:22 has exposed two extremely important elements required of each and every person who decides to honor the commands of Yahuwah. Those two elements are Tekufah and Shaneh. These are going to be integral with observing Yahuwah's statutes and his Moedim. Any person desiring to observe Yahuwah's feasts must indeed, upon command, observe them on a Shaneh year format that fully incorporates the function of the Tekufah, which ends and starts the year. Once more, notice Yahuwah's blinding absence in mentioning any phase whatsoever of the moon. Here's their second witness, 2 Chronicles 24:23. And it came to pass at the end, notice that word is Tekufah, at the end of the year, there's that word Shaneh, so those two words are directly linked, Tekufah and Shaneh, that the host of Syria came up against him, and they came to Judah and Jerusalem, and destroyed all the princes of the people from among the people, and sent all the spoil of them unto the king of Damascus. Wait a minute, the end of the year? Why is there no lunar phase mentioned here? Did Yahuwah forget to mention about a lunar phase when he mentioned about the end of the year? Your answer will be thoroughly realized in this study. We have just seen two witnesses that directly link Shaneh with a Tekufah-based year. Interestingly, that diametrically links Shaneh with Revelation 22:2 and the 12 fruits on the tree of life. 12 fruits, one for each month. Why is there no fruit for a lunar 13th month? Think about that for a while. A clue. Isaiah declares we can know the end from the beginning. So in my estimation, the beginning becomes about as important as oxygen. Vivian, you want to read this one?
Okay. With the pagan lunar worship system fully exposed as being under the feet of Yeshua's bride, that's Revelations 12:1, let's investigate this pertinent Hebrew word. This hyper-informative word is found in Genesis 1:14, translated for us as years, Shaneh, Hebrew 81:41. Jacinius Hebrew Chaldean lexicon has the definition for 81:41 Shaneh as of the course of the sun. Yes. Yes, that was beautiful. Of the course of the sun.
Just a little extra emphasis here.
Yes.
Go ahead, Vivian.
Okay. It's coming up right now. Shaneh continued. Jacinius Hebrew Chaldean lexicon has the definition for 81:41 Shaneh as of the course of the sun, or of the changes of season as spring, summer, autumn, winter. Compare the Latin, which denotes a circle. Let's view Yeshua's scriptural recorded parameters for a circle. Ecclesiastes 1:5. The sun also rises and hurries back to its place where it arose.
Thank you. I want you to note this phrase, which denotes a circle. This is very, very important in this study and in the study of the year. It's paramount that we recognize and understand this insinuation here of 360 degrees. Does the moon ever return back to its original place of commencement on either 360 or 365 days? Does it return to its place of origin is the question. Genesis 1:14, years, Shaneh, of the course of the sun. The point number one, the sun is not a moon, And this word Shanae is directly linked with the sun, and there is no moon involved whatsoever. The sun is not a moon. Or of the changes of seasons as spring, summer, autumn, winter, compare the Latin annus, which denotes a circle. Ecclesiastes 1:5 makes it clear that a circle starts at one point, travels 360 degrees, and returns to the very point of origin. Is there another witness for the sun? Psalms 19:6. Its rising is from one end of the Shemayim, the heavens, and its circuit to the other end. Scriptures declare a completed cycle as point of origin to point of origin. Does the moon accomplish this task without discrepancy? Scripture declares a completed circle as 360 degrees. We note here that once the sun has completed its full circuit, it is then seen in the same location of the Mazzaroth from where it once started. Did Yahuwah designate a very specific time of the year as the home base or point of origin as a tabernacle of the sun? Psalms 19:4. Their line, that's the Mazzaroth, has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them, he set up a tent or a tabernacle for the sun. So the sun has a very special designated spot. The 2 points of reckoning are the 2 Tequfah or Equinox. The spring Tekufah, which is normally around March 20, and number 2 is the autumn Tekufah, and that's normally around September 23. Those are the equinoxes. Go ahead, Vivian.
Okay. It's coming up right now. It is the Abib, the greening point of springtime, Tekufah equinox, when Yahweh told Moshe it was indeed the first month of the year. That it is again, H8141. Moshe was trained in the wisdom of Egypt with Pharaoh's intercrystal, just a minute, again, it's covered, with Pharaoh's intention that Moshe would one day rule Egypt. Acts 7:22. And Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was mighty in words and deeds.
Wisdom of the Egyptians, eh? What? The Egyptians had wisdom? Yes, the wisdom of the Egyptians. I have always been taught that the Egyptians were all about paganism and full of sin. Is it possible that the Egyptians were doing something righteous and Yahuwah purposely had Moshe trained in their type of commerce to later lead Yisrael in those exact same principles? Is that possible? Yahuwah ensured that Moshe grew up and was highly trained, knowing very clearly that the Great Pyramid of Giza and the Sphinx were both designed with astounding accuracy to demarcate the exact day of the Tekufah. We will look at Yahuwah speaking with Moshe later in this study. Accuracy is paramount. If you will go over to the picture of the pyramid, this is the center point on the very top, and we're taking a bird's eye view. Now, the reason I put this green line here is I want you to see what's there when that line goes away. I'm hoping that everybody can see there's a little bit of a line here. Okay, this triangular space is at a different angle than that triangular space. This is kind of like a concave area in here. The Great Pyramid also clearly demarcated the 24-hour cycles immediately prior to and following the Tekufah. A huge importance was emphasized on this guideline for Egypt's commerce. These two angles gave different patterns when the sun hit them. One was lit before the Tekufah and one was lit after the Tekufah. In the ancient days, these were white. That white is gone through the ages. But when the sun hit that one side or the other side, it was very, very easy to determine the days before and after the Tekufah. Moses' wisdom from Egypt. The design of the pyramids can accurately calculate the equinoxes and solstices because of the movements of the Mazzaroth and the sun are perfect, untouched by any man, including pagans. Now, if you go into the middle picture, you'll see there's a little triangle there. That is a shadow. That comes from the sun shining on there on the summer solstice. You'll see there's the two pictures over here, and down here there's three. This is how one of the ways it marks out the solstices and the Tekufah. The knowledge treasury of Egypt. Vivian, do you want to read this?
Okay, sure. Knowledge treasury of Egypt. So Gaza, I just lost that word right now. So the Sphinx, which contains the four symbols, and I'll put this down here, of the representation directing our attention towards Yahweh. The ox, the lion, the eagle, and a human. Ultra important. The Sphinx was designed so when positioned at the tail of the Tequfah equinox, the sun arises in a perfect alignment directly above the head. This is nothing less than another marvel of construction in Egypt.
Is it coincidence that if you're standing on the tail of that Sphinx and the sun comes up on the Tekufah or equinox, is it coincidence? Did it just happen? Did it somehow just take place that the Sphinx was positioned so the sun arose directly above the head between the ears of the Sphinx? Is that possible that it's coincidence? Or was there someone in Egypt doing righteousness?
Looks like it.
I would say so. And I would also say that's how Joseph got favor. And we're going to look at that more a little bit later on. What about the Messianic Testament? We find a very strong Tekufah witness in Yaakov 1:17, and we know that as James. After Yahusha died, his half-brother positively identified the Tekufah-based covenant calendar as still and forever being the calendar of Yahuwah. And in that verse is these words, no shadow of turning. So let's look at it. What does these words, no shadow of turning, mean? When Tekufah arrives, the shadow created by the light from the sun shining on an upright marker makes a perfectly straight line. On the light season before and after the Tekufah, light season, that same marker provides for a shadow tracing the path of an arc across the landscape. This arc is specifically reflecting the path of the sun in the sky from east to west. This is a preparation slide for the next few slides that are coming up, so I want you to pay close attention here. On your left-hand side over here, placing the stakes at the tip of the lower arrows will determine the outer limit of the shadow. So you take this arrow and trace it over here. If you as a person put a stake in the ground here and trace this shadow, you're going to see what that would show. The tips of the arrows show the top point of the pole on the ground in the progression of the sun's cycle. So as the sun went from east to west, your shadow would start here. You'd have another stake in the ground here, another stake in the ground, another stake, and another stake. And you would see an arc of shadow on the ground. So when James says there's no shadow of turning, that turning is referencing the arc of the shadow. James, no shadow of turning. Here is a definite shadow of turning. Now I want to mention to you, this little red dot right here, we are looking at it from a bird's eye view directly straight down. So this is what it would look like if that was on the equator. And I just given it a length as a 5-meter pole, just so we have an idea that it's upright and it's tall. The sun's appearance in the east of the morning leading up to the Tekufah day. There it travels across the sky, goes to the west, and here is the outside. We see the shadow arcs right here. The shadow forms an arc or a curved path. It is a shadow of turning. You see how Yaakov identified that? And it is via point to point by the sun creating the curved shadow that is on either side of the Tekufah. Now let's look at the verse. No shadow of turning. Again, this is a bird's eye view of a vertical 5-meter pole. We're looking straight down on it. And the sun, I'm going to say that the sun is shining straight down on the pole. Okay, the sun appears in the east at morning and begins the shadow on the light season of the Tekufah. So this is the actual day of the Tekufah. The sun goes straight across the sky and the shadow goes back the opposite direction in a straight line. This line here has no shadow of turning. It does not arc. It does not deviate. This is your Tekufah. The shadow from the vertical pole does not deviate any direction from a true line across the landscape. It is a direct, perfectly straight line from point to point on a Tekufah light season. There is no shadow of turning. And I just want to remind people one more time, this chart specifically has the light shining straight down on this pole. You're not, when you live at different areas on the earth, you are going to have a different form of the shadow. But on the Tekufah day, you will still have a direct straight line for your Tekufah. Here we are again. Once more, this is the day after a Tekufah. We have a definite shadow of turning. And that's a bird's eye view, again, of a vertical 5-meter pole. The sun appears in the east on the morning following the Tekufah day, and you see you have a curved arc across where you put your stakes. You have a shadow of turning. This lets us know that the Tekufah has taken place. The shadow forms an arc or a curved path, a shadow of turning via point to point by the sun making a shadow. And here's my apology. I'm sorry, I'm not able to make this chart track perfectly the way it should. I spent quite a bit of time on it and I'm not capable of doing it, so I apologize if it's not accurate. Okay, no shadow of turning. Trope. This word up here, G5157, trope. This word is used once in the scriptures. I want you to look at what it says. This is from Strong's, so we'll just take it for what it is. A turn, trope. A revolution, figuratively, and variation, a turning. The Greek lexicon, what does it say? Read this carefully. A turning of the heavenly bodies. James 1:17. Whoops, I went a little bit too fast here. Need to back up. Often so in the Greek writings from Homer and Hesiod down. See Liddell and Scott under the word. If we look up Job 38:33 and Deuteronomy 33:14, we're going to look at, you'll see designation of the Tekufah. Very, very important. Job 38:31. Do you bind the bands of Kima, Pleiades, or loosen the cords of Kesiel, the Orion? Do you bring out the constellations, the Mazzaroth, in its season? Or do you lead the bear, Arcturus, with its sons? And I want to point out this right here. You'll see Mazzaroth. This is one name that is given many multiple stars in the constellations, but it is named as one unit. It is the Mazzaroth and encases all the stars. So let's read more about it. The Mazzaroth. Do you know the laws of the heavens? Let's look at this next sentence really carefully. The context is the Mazzaroth. Or do you set their rule over the earth? Is it safe to say that the Mazzaroth has a rule over the earth from this text? Jeremiah 33:20. Thus saith Yahuwah, if you could break my covenant with the day, and my covenant with the night, so that there be not night and day in their season. So many times the night and day are confused. Thus said Yahuwah, if you could break my covenant with the day and my covenant with the night, so that there be not day and night in their season, when man declares the 24-hour period to begin at sunset, and I think we've all heard this before, a spiritual disconnect is created. Looking at Deuteronomy 33:14. And for the precious fruits brought forth by the sun, and for the precious things put forth by the moon. Is light one of the things that's put forth by the moon? I have been told that the moon gives off light. And I've also been told that the moon reflects light, so therefore it is the light of Genesis 1:14, even though it's not mentioned there. But let's have a look at Isaiah 13. And I'm going to read that to you right now from my scriptures, and I'm going to read out of the KJV. For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof, that's the Mazzaroth, shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. Did anybody catch that? The moon shall not cause her light to shine. Now, I have been told that this is positively indicating that the moon has light. There is a problem with that understanding because the moon is male and has a male gender. But yet in the verse it says, the moon shall not cause her light to shine. There is a female gender given there. So what is the gender of the sun? The sun has a female gender. Yes, it has a male gender also, but it has a female predominant gender. So when the verse says, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine, that's what we read in English. It is pointing that the moon is not going to let, or is not going to reflect the light from the female gender sun. So to say that the moon has light by that verse is an incorrect translation. That is what we've been taught. And people do not dig deep enough into the Hebrew to find out the exact meanings of what is said. Now, if we go to Matthew 24:29, you're going to see the exact same problem. The moon is not female. And when it is spoken of as giving her light, it is directly referencing the gender of female on the sun, because the moon has a male gender. So that those two verses cannot be used for the moon to give light. It does not work according to the Hebrew words. Okay, that's just a little bunny rabbit trail here. Let's move on. Note very clearly that there are two types of calendar reckoning identified within this verse. Number one, Thayer's Greek lexicon referenced this verse specifying the word trope, a turning. Trope positively identifies the Matzerah by the Melchizedek patriarchs. This is exactly what is being brought to our attention here. The number two calendar that's identified is the lunar-based calendar, which is used for what? For agricultural purposes, and it is also positively identified. But the lunar-based calendar that's used for the agriculture purposes has absolutely no connection whatsoever in any way, shape, or form to Yahuwah's worship cycles. It simply just has no connection. It does not exist. Okay, back to 8141 Shane. Now this is where it starts to get interesting. Let's look at the Hebrew DNA, if you will, of the year as outlined in the scriptures by none other than Yahuwah himself. A Hebrew lexicon by J. Parkhurst. This is from 1762, and it uses no Masoretic vowel influences. And there will be some of you that will realize the importance of that phrase or that little sentence that I put in there. I won't go into it right here. 8141, Shane. Now, please, please, please read these definitions, ingest them, understand them, and remember them, because this is you're going to see this over and over again. To iterate, repeat, do again, a second time, to be repeated. And I'm just going to go down to the highlighted ones again. Secondly, the second time. They're in the green brackets or green oblong. A second time. That is the DNA. That is what makes up this word, Shane, which has been translated years. If this word, Shane, cannot activate to cause a second time, well, I'm just going to leave it be at that, and we're going to see what happens when Shane cannot be repeated. Question: does the moon sequentially repeat its pattern time after time, returning to the original place of commencement? No, it does not sequentially repeat its pattern, not even close. What result does repeating a second time produce? And there's your Shane years, and you see that it just continues to repeat and continues to repeat and continues to repeat. This is a set of 8 Shane years towards a Jubilee of 50. Each one is to repeat itself in a perfect mirror-like duplication. Important. Once a Shane year has repeated itself a second time, there then is 2 Shane years. The principle. Once they have duplicated, there is then an even number which is fully capable to be divided evenly. There will be no remainder number left over. And that is very unlike the lunar calendar, who has numbers left over. There is always a remainder. A Shane year can only be a Shane year if it repeats by mirror image a second time. There is your mirror image repeating a second time. Look at that carefully. Did the last slide have a mirror image? Let's look at it again, but a little more focused. Is that a mirror image? No. The highlight color is different. Is it possible that Hasatan might be pulling the same tricks on us today? A very subtle and insidious convolution of truth? Truth. 30-day month, the insidious convolution, a 29.5-day month. Very close, but not exact. It's off. It is convoluted. Okay, what occurs when a 13-month lunar year tries to enter every third year, like the Metonic cycle demands? Shane 12 repeats. Shane 12 repeats. Lunar year 13. What? Let's look at that again. Repeat. Repeats. What happened to the repeat? That is your lunar year, your 13th year. It was not able to repeat because it does not repeat. And we're going to see that clearly in a little bit. What happened to the perfection replication, or to the perfect replication pattern required by the Hebrew definitions? Let's view this one more time and notice the repeat vanish. And I'm doing this specifically because I want you to see what happens when something does not repeat. It cannot repeat. There is no continuous effect. It stops. And that's going to become very, very important. Inherent within Yahuwah's Shane year is the characteristic of consecutive perpetual duplication. Does that sound like eternity to you? Without the opportunity to repeat itself identically a second time, the first yearly example simply cannot exist without the second fulfillment. Here we are. This is the 13-month lunar year, and it's attempting to repeat. It's attempting to become Shane. Shane repeats. Shane repeats. Your lunar year. Repeat. Why? It stopped. What happened? Here is the consequences of the failure to repeat a second time. If it cannot repeat, it cannot exist. What about this Shane year? If this Shane year is unable to repeat, can it exist? Okay, and I repeat, this is a Shane year. It must, by the definition within itself, by the DNA, it must repeat. If a lunar year prevents it from repeating, what happens? It does not exist. If the Shane year cannot repeat itself, time cannot exist. not according to Yahuwah's words. Time. Isaiah declares 7 times the end from the beginning. Yahuwah's Shaneh time is inherently eternal because it must duplicate each time it is duplicated. Sounds a lot like eternity for me. Man's lunar time is always ready. That is the words of Yahusha in John 7:6. Why? Through his calendar manipulation, and only exists in man's contaminated imagination. Shaneh. Vivian, do you want to read this, please?
Sure. Shaneh, repeating a second time. So where and from whom does this idea about duplicating after one's own kind originate? I know. Genesis 1:11, Elohim said, "Let the earth bring forth grass and plant that yields seed, and fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on the earth." And it came to be. Then verse 12, and the earth brought forth grass and plant that yields seed according to its kind, and the tree yields fruit, whose seed is in itself according to its kind. And Elohim saw that it was good.
I need to add in a little bit here. I must thank a good friend of mine for bringing this to my attention. He was looking at my manuscript here and he said to me, well, isn't that just like what it says in Genesis 1, where things duplicated according to its kind? Yahuwah laid down this principle according to duplication according to its kind. Why? Because that's the example he had already set with the word Shaneh. Oh, can you hear me?
Oh,
Can you hear me?
I'll have to wait till it starts again.
Vivian, can you hear me?
I don't hear anybody.
I can hear you, Tim.
I can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes, I can hear Vivian too.
Okay, very good. We'll continue. Yahuwah's eternal duplication pattern was applied at creation. Yahuwah keeps his patterns. He does not break them. Go ahead, Vivian. Read this one, please.
So I'm just waiting for it to move here. Okay, Genesis 1:21. And Elohim created great sea creatures and every living creature that moves, with which the waters teemed, according to its kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. Verse 24, and Elohim said, let the earth bring forth the living creatures according to its kind, livestock and creeping creatures and beasts of the earth according to its kind. And it came to be so. Verse 25, and Elohim made the beast of the earth according to its kind, livestock according to its kind, and all that creep on the earth according to its kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. The divine pattern of repeating after itself was established at creation. The Shaneh year upholds the full and fulfills its replication pattern super effectively. Yes.
Has anyone noticed that Yahuwah did not introduce a rogue identity, which was different and or separate from the previous ones? Why then would Yahuwah introduce at any point a 13-month year, which is totally foreign into his established Kodesh pattern? Shane. On the next slide, we are going to see a 20-year record of the dates when the Tekufah occurs. You will notice one Gregorian date difference. You will also receive the answer to why there is a one-date discrepancy. The question then is, will the lunar year expose exact accuracy? Okay. You'll see those purple or rectangular squares, whatever. Look at those dates, March 20, March 20, March 20, 19, 20, 19. Over here for the autumn, 22, 22, 23, 22, 23. There's one date difference. Note how close the dates are. The single date discrepancy is directly related to the extra portion of a day over the 365 mark, i.e. 365.242199. That is why there is a one Gregorian date discrepancy. But it's very, 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 very close. Also note that Yahuwah's 360-day calendar from creation, that is the same calendar that all prophecy is outlined by 30-day months. This 360-day calendar does not contain the uneven amount of time it now takes to fulfill Tekufah to Tekufah. Here the yearly accuracy and repetition by the moon. Now, let's look and see if the dates of the moon can repeat accurately. There in the red rectangles, you'll see the dates of the new moon, or yeah, full moon, sorry. I just took the full moon dates because they were the easiest to bring up, and they still reveal the accuracy of the moon. The 31st, and then the next year was the 19th, next year was the 9th, next year is the 28th. How close are those? The 11, 10, 19, 10, 12, and 19, those are the days of variance from year to year. Compare that with the one day of a Tekufah year. Here we have the lunar year, and the numbers are all over the board. Go over here, the same thing. See, some of these are 19-day differences. Now, if you remember, well, I know some of you probably did what I used to do. I used to search for the new moon, and I used to search the skies, and yeah, I missed it many, many, many times, but I always believed that somebody spotted it, yeah, so then I would go after the new moon. Our Passover would be up to 3 weeks difference from year to year. And that is shown by right here. This one shows 19 days out of sync. It does not and cannot duplicate accurately, nowhere near like the Tekufah-based calendar. Those are all the dates and the days that are variance days, I should say, that do not line up. Is this the type of Shane repeating years that Adam lived? All 930 of them? Here's your numbers in black. These are the different dates that the full moon landed upon in a 20-year program. All these different dates. Is this repetition? Is this repetition perfectly and accurately as the Tekufah-based calendar is? No. Well, maybe it's time we need to look a little bit closer. These are the different Gregorian dates upon which the full moon occurred. How can it be said that Adam lived 930 Shanae years that were repeating if he lived by this calendar, which has a kaleidoscope style of timing? Can the Hebrew definition of repeating a second time be applied to each of these lunar years? 930 times consecutively? Let that sink in for a little bit. Shanae duplicated itself 930 times in absolute perfection for Adam's life.
Wow.
Where was there a lunar year in Adam's life? The lunar-based calendar simply does not and cannot duplicate itself a second time, not accurately. The moniker applied to the moon, the Wanderer, is a very appropriate name describing the inherent characteristic of the lunar patterns. There is another moniker given to the moon, which is not quite as beautiful, and it is called the Drunken Sailor for a reason, because it is very undependable. On the other view, the Tekufah provides for an extremely precise, accurate, and duplicating pattern. Shanae, 8141, Hebrew definitions fulfilled. There is your duplicating pattern. Vivian, would you like to read this, please?
Okay. Strong's records 8141 Shanae as having the root word 8138 Shana with the definitions of repeat, return, do the second time. Question: what inherent characteristic has caused the moon to receive the moniker the Wanderer for its reputation of being very dependable? The moon's yearly circuit is far from a circle because it does not return to its original place of commencement. Hence, the very erratic timing period. The etymology dictionary of the Hebrew language records 8141 as change, period of changing seasons, to repeat, do again.
Yes, the moon is very, very, very undependable. There's a historic documentation when the years and years and years ago when the French and the English were fighting the war and the English were losing badly. And there was a man there that was after the English hierarchy to go to, I lost my words, to navigate by the Mazzaroth, by the stars, because at that time they navigated by the moon. And somehow when they navigated by the moon, they were always out of sync, and when their ships would not meet the other ships, and they were losing the war badly. The English army, the English Navy listened to this man, and they changed, and they decided, okay, we're going to navigate by the stars. It was the turnaround in the war, and the English won a resounding victory. And it is all attributed by them to proper navigation with something that is dependable, and that is the Mazzaroth, not the moon. There will be no compromise with paganism. And that is my motto. And that is when I look at the moon. That is what I think, what I say, and what I do. Good reasons to search for truth. Isaiah 43:27. Vivian, can you read this in your absolute terrific expression?
Isaiah 43:27. your first father sinned, and your interpreters have transgressed against me. Oh, Luke 11:52. Woe to you learned in the Torah, because you took away the key of knowledge. You did not enter in yourself, and those entering in you hindered. So Luke 12:1 and 2 says, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. And whatever is concealed shall be revealed, and whatever is concealed shall be revealed, and whatever is hidden shall be known.
Thank you.
Yes.
That first verse, let's go back and read it again, because this has an importance about equal with oxygen. And your interpreters have transgressed against me. Let that sink in very, very deep. We are told from inspiration that we will be fed lies. Those transgressions are words that do not agree with Yahuwah, and we are being warned. Wake up, people. Your interpreters have transgressed against Yahuwah. Next verse again. Woe to you learned in the Torah, because you took away the key of knowledge, or key to knowledge. Who was Yahusha speaking to at that time? Was it not the Pharisees? If you go back in the last series of the moon, oh the moon, that Charlene did so impeccably, it became very, very, very clear what was removed and what that key was. The key is the Tekufah, and it was removed, and the moon was inserted in the year to follow the moon instead of the Tekufah. When the Tekufah is removed and the moon is inserted, this is a fulfillment of Isaiah 14, verse 13. Satan said that he was going to control the Moedim. How did he do it? He convinced people to follow the moon, which takes people, worshippers of Yahuwah, takes them off of Yahuwah's calendar and puts them on a lunar calendar. It effectively allows Satan to usurp the worship intended for Yahuwah for himself. The Tekufah is the key of knowledge. When we are on time for Yahuwah's feasts, we get the full blessing that Yahuwah intended. And the bottom verse again, in the white or in the yellow highlight, and whatever is concealed shall be revealed, and whatever is hidden shall be known. Thank you, Charlene, for doing such an incredible job on your series, The Moon, Oh the Moon. Incredible. Everything is revealed there, documented step by step for anybody that wants to see the bottom line. Did Yahuwah identify the Tekufah-based covenant calendar on the fourth cycle of creation? It's bothered me a lot in my past years. I see the Tekufah everywhere. How come I did not see it at creation? It bothered me for years. Genesis 1:14, and Elohim said, let lights come to be in the expanse of the Shemayim to separate the day from the night. And let them be for signs and appointed times and for days and for what? Years. Shaneh. Remember that word Shaneh? I think you've heard it once or twice. Shaneh can only be if there is a Tekufah. Do you agree with me, Vivian?
Yes, I do.
So, Vivian, would you agree with me if I said that the Tekufah-based year is identified positively in Genesis 1:14?
Yes, states it's clear as can be.
Yes. So, and I always ask the question when people come to me about studying or going by the moon, and yet the moon wasn't even mentioned until 1700 years later in Joseph's dream, and even then the context had nothing to do with timing of the year of the worship cycles. Why was the Tekufah not spoken earlier? That was always my question. Well, here it is. Your Tekufah-based covenant calendar, which has the DNA for eternity, is identified positively in Genesis 1:14. This is your covenant calendar. That is the piece of the puzzle that is so hyper important. That is the key to wisdom. And Elohim said, "Let lights come to be." Verse 16 tells us there were how many lights, Vivian?
2 great lights created in
I
the
don't-
heavens.
That doesn't say 3.
No.
Man declares that there are 3 lights. Man wants the sun, the moon, and the stars. That by default positively indicates one of these points is an imposter. One identity is a what, Vivian?
False light.
Which one?
Well, yes, the moon. You got it. You did your homework.
Thanks. Which light is the greatest in physical size? Is it the moon, which covers a minuscule portion of the sky? Or is it the Mazzaroth, or no, is the Mazzaroth greater, that it spans the entire expanse of the heavens? How often? Permanently? Or is the Mazzaroth AWOL for half the month after the moon's fashion? No, the Mazzaroth is permanently in the sky. It rules the night. The Mazzaroth. Which light illuminates the complete heavens every night season in every possible hour of darkness, 24/7 and 365? Which light is that? It can only be said it is the Mazzaroth, because I work outside. I watch the moon lots in the night or in the daytime sky. The ruler of the night in the daytime? Why? Where is it? Why is it in the daytime sky? Why isn't it not all night long at night, identical to the Mazzaroth? The Mazzaroth is the ruler of the night. That is one of the 2 lights that was identified in Genesis 1. Which celestial identity actually emits light? The moon? No. The Mazzaroth. You're right, Vivian. And people tell me the moon has light, the moon has light, the moon has light. I have watched many eclipses, and when the light is removed from the moon, it's black. There is no light. It simply does not exist. The Mazzaroth is clearly the outstanding winner in a physical presence in the Shemayim. What about a spiritual presence? The Mazzaroth-based covenant calendar was identified in Genesis 1:14 as being the ultimate celestial timepiece tool for orchestrating all eternity for Yahuwah's people. In the scriptures, the moon is first identified in Joseph's dream approximately 1700 years after creation. If the moon is the celestial identity to determine the Kodesh appointed times, why did Yahuwah wait approximately 1700 years to identify it by name? Vivian, do you want to read the next one, please?
Okay, I have here the Mazzaroth and the moon, a spiritual light's presence. What type of years did Adam live? Genesis 5:4, and the days of Adam after he had begotten Seth were 800, and he begot sons and daughters. But it's the years, the 800 years, that's 8141. And he begat sons and daughters. The moon, apparently by scriptural documentation, Adam did not live out any lunar-based years. Right. Yes.
There was no lunar-based years in Adam's time. Those 8141 are Shanae years that duplicate within them or from themselves. Go ahead, Vivian.
Okay, so it says the Mazarah, this little block here. The Mazarah, Adam lived his years according to the 8141 Shanae year that requires, by Hebrew definition, an even number of months that are divided equally. Adam did not know of remainder month left over. Yes, that means no 13th lunar years in Adam's life, period. That means the first 930 years of creation were without a lunar month. Now we could stop right now.
Yes, we could, but it gets so much better.
Yes.
Were there follow-up Shanae years to Adam's years? The Mazzaroth is clearly the outstanding winner in a physical presence in the Shemayim. What about the spiritual presence? Enoch lived 365 8141 Shanae years. These years, by Hebrew definition, are divisible by another number without a remainder. Enoch walked with Yahuwah. And that is from Genesis 5:24. Enoch lived out 365 years without a 13th month from the lunar calendar, ever happening once in his life. And I think that is very, very profound. The Mazzaroth-based covenant calendar was identified in Genesis 7:11 as the type of Shanae years that Noah obtained 600 years of life. Genesis 8:13. Shanae. Noah was a Melchizedek priest. Why did he not have lunar years if he was a Melchizedek priest? Noah's documentation of the flood account solidly reflects the Mazzaroth-based covenant calendar years through accurate accounting of a lifetime during the flood. The accounting recorded in the flood event makes any lunar calendar affiliation an absolute impossibility. And for anybody that is interested to look at my study on the documentation, all broken down, applied to charts on the flood account with Noah, you will see that the dates prove very effectively that there's not even a possible chance that Noah was operating on a lunar calendar, because the dates do not align with the scriptures. It's impossible. It just cannot happen. Noah, a Melchizedek priest, was living by the Tekufah-based calendar, Shanae. Vivian, go ahead.
Okay, what changes in terms of types of years did the flood bring forth? Does scripture account Yahweh's chosen leaders, including Melchizedek priests, as living under a lunar-based calendar after the flood? I don't think so.
Very good question, Vivian, because I have been told many times, oh, well, the flood changed the calendar. Let's look at it, shall we?
Okay.
Let's begin a chart of the lives of the patriarchs. Here's Adam, 930 Shane. Seth, 912 Shane. Enosh, 905. Canaan, 910 Shane. Malhalel, 895 Shane. Yered, 962. Henoch, 365 Shane. Methuselah, 969 Shane. Lamech, 777. Shall I continue? 950, 600, 438, 433, 464, 239, 239, 230, 148, 205. Abraham, 175 Shane. Yitzhak, 180 Shane. Yaakov, 147 Shane. Pretty interesting when you hear people say the God of Isaac, Jacob, and Abraham, especially when you think that they lived Shane years, duplicating years. Interesting. For what we see there, the flood did not change the years. There was Shane years before the flood and Shane years after the flood. This is approximately 2,300 Shane years after creation, and still what? No sign of a lunar-based year. Go ahead, Vivian.
Okay, did the flood bring about a yearly change? Shem, Genesis 11, verse 10 to 13. These are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old, that's Shane years, and begot Arphaxad. 2 years, that's Shane again, after the flood. Okay. And Shem lived after, and he begat Arphaxad 500 years. That's Shane, and begat sons and daughters. And Arphaxad lived 530 years, 8141, and begat Selah. And Arphaxad lived after he begat Selah 400 Shane, and 3 years, 400 and 3 years, and begat sons and daughters. And then it says, why does Scripture not record previous lives by non-equally divided lunar years? It would have been so confusing, I'm telling you. all those years and people they lived, can you imagine them arguing about a lunar year and who saw what and when they saw it? That would have been so confusing. My God.
It brings out how incredibly beautiful the covenant calendar is, because every month had 30 days, and the Tekufah, there was no variance. It is accurate. Time can be counted back and forth so easily. It's just absolutely astounding. Why has the number 400 revealed an 8141 number when it does not indicate a direct connection to a specific year? An example, and Arphaxad lived after he begot Selah 48141 and 3 years, 8141 again, because that number is perfectly divisible by another number without leaving a remainder of any kind. A moon? No, there's no lunar years here, period. The number 13 cannot, nor ever will be, an 8141 number. Never. 13 cannot happen. 13, is it 8141? Divisible evenly? And you'll see here, there's always one left over. Plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, plus 3, plus 1, and a bunch of decimal points. 13 divided by these numbers never works out evenly. It is not Shane. It cannot be. Will the scriptures ever reveal a lunar affiliated worship year? And Abraham was 100 years old, Shane, when his son Isaac was born unto him. The Mazzaroth-based covenant calendar was recorded as timing the very birth of Isaac, the beginning of the Hebrew nation, Genesis 17:21. 100 years that, or Abraham lived 100 years that contained an even number of months. Now, I'm going to ask you an off question. Does that mean the scriptures do not count the 33.3 years that might have contained a 13th lunar year? I don't think so. There simply was no lunar years in Abraham's life, period.
Right.
Is scripture purposely hiding the idea that Abraham was actually 133.3 years old? Pretty interesting when you look at those numbers, 33.3. No, there was no lunar years for Abraham. Go ahead and read this one when you're ready, Vivian.
Okay. So was the birth of Enoch timed by a lunar year? Genesis 18:1, and Yahweh appeared to him, Avraham, by the terebinth tree at Mare, and Genesis 18:6-8. Abraham hurried to prepare cakes, unleavened, fine flour, wheat, curds, milk, and a chosen sacrificed calf. Might this look like Aviv 14 to you? A big smiley face. Genesis 18:10, and he, Yahweh, said, I shall certainly return to you according to the time of life. And see, Sarah, your wife, is to have a son. The word life is chaim, 24:16. The word time is et. Contextually, and by definition, et has a meaning of has the meaning of a fit or proper time, an appointment, an opportunity, a time, or of event. Sorry, couldn't see it all.
No problem. I'm glad to have you read, Vivian. I appreciate your enthusiasm. It's great. Okay, this word, et, a fit or proper time. Would that be a qualified time by Yahuwah? Let's look at it. The birth of Isaac, the Hebrew nation, on a lunar year, 8:24:16. Chai has the definitions of living and alive, and green of vegetation. Then I'm going to drop down to number 4, reviving of the springtime. Do these definitions align with the appearance of an Aviv 14 appointed time observed by Abraham? What did Yahuwah proclaim next? Genesis 18:14. Is any matter too hard for Yahuwah? At the appointed time, 41:40, moed, does that seem like a proper time to you? I am going to return to you according to the what? The time et of life, chai. And Sarah is said to have, or no, is to have a son. By 3 highly specific words, chai, Yahuwah,
At the qualified time, or the moed, which is an appointed time, one of his appointed times. He knew what he was talking about.
So where's the lunar year in there?
No, too confusing.
There is no lunar year in here because Abraham didn't live by a lunar year. Did Abraham live out any lunar-based years? Years where the months cannot be divided evenly without there being a month left over, a 13th month? Okay, pay attention. And these are the days of the Shaneh years of Abraham's life, which he lived, and 115 Shaneh years. There is 3 witnesses to Abraham's Shaneh years that can be divided equally without any remainders left over. A lunar year, I'm sorry, it didn't exist in Abraham's time. Abraham's life, years, are they divisible evenly? And 115 years, each one given an 8141 designation. Why? How can that be? 174 or 175 years, Shaneh? Yes. 175 divided by 7 equals 25. No remainder left over. It can be divided evenly. No remainder, no 13. Period. It did not exist in Abraham's life. How about Yitzhak and Yaakov? Yes, Yitzhak lived 8141 Shaneh years. We see that in Genesis 25 and 26, chapter 35, 28. Yaakov lived according to Yahuwah's 8141 Shaneh years, and you see that in Genesis 47, 28. Interestingly, Jacob waited for another 7 Shaneh years for Rachel. An interesting point to that is Jacob knew exactly how long he had to work for Rachel. There was no variation of lunar years. He didn't have to wait for the new moon so that he knew when he was finished working for Rachel. He knew by the Tekufah. It was an absolute. Clearly, there was no moon leading Jacob's worship of Yahuwah. 13, I'm sorry, didn't exist in their lives. The moon was first identified in Joseph's dream. Did Joseph's life consist of lunar years? Genesis 37:9 tells us that Joseph dreamed a dream containing a moon. Please note carefully, this is the first time that the moon was identified in the scriptures. This is your first time. What is the context here?
A dream.
Yes. And it had nothing to do with timing Yahuwah's worship cycles, did it, Vivian?
No, not at all.
Yeah. The life of Joseph, Genesis 50, verse 26. So Joseph died being 110 Shaneh years old, and they embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. The context in Genesis 37:9 says nothing about looking to the moon for direction of times. Joseph, being a man of Yahuwah, he never lived out a 13th month, nor looked to the moon to determine months, years, or appointed times. A lunar-based worship year did not exist for Joseph. Go ahead, Vivian.
Okay. So Joseph dreamed about the moon in his celestial type dream. Yet the years that Joseph lived are recorded as Shaneh years. This factor shows that even though Joseph's dream contained a moon identity, the moon, had zero connection with timing of Yahweh's worship cycles. What about the years of famine detailed in Pharaoh's dream? Genesis 41, verse 1. And it came to pass at the end of the 2 full years, Shaneh, that Pharaoh dreamed and beheld, he stood by a river. And 41, verse 26. the 7 good kind of are 7 years, Shane, and the 7 good years are 7 Shane. The dream is one. Even the years of abundance and the famine are recorded as Shane years. That would repeat a second time. Yes.
Vivian, do you find it interesting that the years of Pharaoh were recorded as Shane years?
Yes, right. Because if someone wanted to make a demarcation, they could have done it there, making the fact that he supposedly was not a believer. So therefore, they could have made the demarcation there.
Yes, they could have. Very well. Good point. Thank you, Vivian. I appreciate that. Okay, here we are back to this. The wisdom of Mitzrayim. Why did Yahuwah have Moshe trained in all things Egyptian? Was there something there that Yahuwah wanted for Moshe to be a leader? I think so. Genesis 41:1 and Genesis 41:26. Do you realize that these two verses have full secular support as found in the Malapim tablets? And I would suggest, I was going to put it in this study and I was going to put it in part 2, but I think everyone needs to go and look this up for themselves and find out about the Malapim tablets and what it is about the Malapim tablets that document the years in Egypt had 12 months, they were 30-day months, and there was 360 cycles in 1 year, and it was Tekufah to Tekufah, and it was dawn to dawn. Egypt?
Wow.
Yes, it was in Egypt that this is documented. Are you starting to wonder? Are you starting to realize why it is that Yahuwah had Moshe trained in the wisdom of Mitzrayim? Shane, that's what was there. Go ahead, Vivian.
Okay, so I think I've got past. Joseph's life is recorded in Shane years, which not only duplicated by mirror image, but always consecutively repeat. Pharaoh's life is also recorded as containing Shane years, which repeated a second time in succession. Did Mitzrayim, Egypt, operate on a solar or lunar-based economy? Well, I say solar.
And if you said solar, then you would be right. Absolutely. There's a picture of the Malapim tablets. For an answer, we go to the Malapim tablets. These tablets expose that, yes, indeed, the economy in Mitzrayim, or Egypt, operated on a strict solar-based year. Their economy, note I wrote the economy, because yes, they did worship the moon too. Yes, they did. It's documented. But their economy of the country operated on a strict solar-based year. This type of solar-based year contained documented and dedicated 30-day months, no more, no less. The lunar 29.5 day month had no place in Mitzrayim's economy. Who was this Pharaoh and what was his heritage? Vivian, can you read this, please?
Yes, please. When Joseph lived in Mitzrayim, what kind of Pharaoh ruled the land? Was he of a pagan heritage, or did he worship our Creator at one time in his life? The Webster Dictionary of the Bible, page 329, The Pharaoh who welcomed them, that's Jacob and his family, was doubtless of the Hyksos dynasty, and being himself a Semite, was the more ready to welcome men of a race identical to his, after its own kind. With this agrees the fact that the Israelites were settled around the Hyksos capital of Egypt on the plain of Tanis. That's Psalms 78, verse 12 and 43. The king who knew not Joseph, Exodus 1, verse 8, and who opposed the Israelites, represents a Pharaoh who reigned after the expulsion of the Hyksos. The Hyksos Pharaoh was a Semite.
Vivian, is it possible then that Sphinx had a reason for being built to document and declare and expose the Tekufah? Would this Hyksos Pharaoh, would he design it that way, being a Semite?
Yes, and of great wisdom or knowledge given to him to do that.
Yes, and now we're starting to see why it is that Joseph, oh, I got Jacob up there, don't I? Huh, have to change that. We're seeing why Joseph got such favor when he went into Mitzrayim. The Hyksos Pharaoh was a Semite, a descendant of Shem. Let that sink in, please. Could this be one of the miracles of how Joseph received great favor from the Pharaoh? Are we beginning to see how Yahuwah blessed the years of Joseph and the Pharaoh, which were both recorded in agreement with the Shaneh type of years? Okay, that's it for this study. Let's prepare for part number 2. Did Yahuwah identify the Tekufah-based year when he identified the first month of the year to Moshe in Exodus 12? Think about that for a minute. Today, most feast keepers that I know of declare that we follow the moon, and where do they go to? Exodus 12. What would you think if you saw that Yahuwah identified the Tekufah-based covenant calendar in Exodus 12? And now it gets even better. I am told many, many times over and over and over, and I've read documents and I've read articles, and here's the question. Is it true that Ezekiel revealed a 13th month in the scriptures? This is a big one. This is a heavy one. And this is going to rock some people, I suspect. This is what's coming in our next, well, that's only a very small portion of what's coming in part 2. And I am excited to bring this to you. May your name be found among the numbers performing his commands, Revelation 22:14. We need to be walking out his lifestyle that he asked for us. Just knowing it is not sufficient. The word Shema means to listen and act accordingly. We need to be walking it out. Vivian, thank you very much for helping me. I greatly, greatly appreciate it.
You're welcome. It sure makes more sense when you've got to pay attention because you're going to be called to read. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing here. Excellent.
Thank you, Tim and Vivian. Excellent presentation. Hallelujah. That was very, very good. Now I have a question for those that are still listening on YouTube. How many witnesses do you need? We have more than 2, more than 3, more than 4, several witnesses as to the word year and the importance of it. Hallelujah. Thank you, Tim. That was excellent. Excellent.
Yes, it was.
Oh, shall we?
There's going to be a lot more witnesses in part 2, believe me.
Even today in Israel, Aviv is spring. It means spring. Tel Aviv, place of spring, new beginning, spring. Aviv means spring. It never meant moon. I have seen people use that verse before in Exodus 12. I don't know where they get a moon from, though. I'm looking at that verse. Because in the month of the spring, when things turn green, this will be the beginning of the year to you guys, to us guys.
There's one thing I want to point out, and I want to mention it. I need to say this. On the moon topic, Mario, Jericho was taken down on the 13th trumpet. They marched around one day one time around for 6 days. There's 6 trumpets. On the 7th day, there was 7 trumpets. 6 plus 7 is 13. On the 13th trumpet, the walls went into the ground. They didn't fall over. They went into the ground. They were leveled. Why 13? Because Yahuwah is telling us that the 13th month, the lunar calendar of which Jericho was the center of, that lunar calendar is finished. He's telling us the victory is won, it's done, it's over. And when we look at Revelation 12:1, where is the moon? The moon is under the feet of the bride of Bethula, under the feet, a position of no authority whatsoever, vanquished authority. The moon is done from the walls of Jericho, done.
Now, the 13th trumpet, I hadn't seen that. I'm not sure if I'm getting that. I know that it was 6 days they walked around, they blew the shofars for those 6 days, and then in the 7th, they were told to be quiet, right? And then they walked around, and then on the 7th day they blew, if I remember right. And,
yeah.
And but you say 13 trumpets.
6 plus 7.
Wasn't it the 13th round rather than trumpet?
It's the 13th trumpet. I could be wrong, but I could be wrong.
Well, either way, we know that Yerach, meaning moon, and Yeracho, meaning moon city, the walls came tumbling down at the frequency. Hallelujah.
Yes.
And it's interesting that they, as you said, went right into the ground and it's leveled. And the fact then, you can't bring that up. You can't resurrect a moon study when it's in the ground. It's done.
It's done. It's done. That was excellent,
Tim,
that was so good.
yeah, Tim, I'm just wondering if you could share your screen one more time and bring up slide number 48. I just wanted to show the people something that I found kind of interesting, and maybe people didn't have a chance to see it, about patterns. Because there's so many patterns in the scriptures, and this was a really neat pattern.
Is this the one you want?
Just waiting for it to come up. Yeah, that one is the one. Could you show the people the pattern of how you have, with the Tekufah, you have March 20, 20, 20, 19. 20, 20, 20, 19. That pattern is repeating. Can you see that, everybody? You get 3 20s and a 19. This is partly right now due to because we have a leap year and it takes it back, you know, every so often. But you have the same type of pattern with the autumn Tekufah, where you have September 22, 22, 23, and then you'll have 3 20 seconds, and then a 23rd, 3 20 seconds, and a 23rd. Tim and I have been looking at some Tekufah patterns for some other calendar dates here. We did that last week. But these patterns are really important. And I think it's your next slide, Tim, that you bring up with the moon. Is it slide number 49? Yeah, after we get past this. I think everybody can see that really easy, those patterns for spring and fall Tekufah. And then on slide 49, where Tim chose full moon dates, but you know, it doesn't matter. Conjunction, sliver moon, full moon, it doesn't matter. This would all be relevant. You do not see any patterns here whatsoever. It just doesn't exist. It's not there.
I have a question on that word that you just used, Charlene. Every third year we have a leap year. Now, you mean on the Gregorian calendar, right? There's a leap year. There's not literally
yes.
another.
And I shouldn't say,
Yeah,
it's not every third year that the leap year happens. It's every fourth year. But you will see that
calendar year leap.
Because of that leap day that is put in there, yeah, you'll have an adjustment with the equinox. That's the way it is right now. I do believe that when we go back to a 360-day year calendar, that's not going to happen. Our Tekufahs will be on the exact same day every single year. Tim and I also noticed that, I'm just going to grab a number. If Tekufah this year was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon for where we live, next year it'll be about 8 o'clock at night. It moves ahead 6 hours because you have to account for that quarter of a day, you know, that the year doesn't pick up until you have 4 years in a row. Then the next year, Tekufah wouldn't be at 8 o'clock at night. It would move it to around 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning. It moves it forward about 6 hours until you get 4 years of those. Then you've moved it, you know, then it does this pattern again. So,
Okay, so
because I always wondered, how come?
You're saying that the time of day each year changes. What I'm finding, and I know, you know, I've been told this several times, I still haven't been able to get over it though, because I'm still looking at, if I count these out, and even though we have the 5, you know, marker days that we can, you know, get ready and prepare and, you know, visually be ready for this thing, it still turns out to be, at the moment, 365th day is the Tekufah every stinking year. And so then next year comes along and it's 365th day is the Tekufah. Next year comes along, the 365th day is the Tekufah. Though on the Gregorian calendar, it might look like it shifted from 20 to 21st or 21st to 20th, but still the 365th day is Tekufah. At least that's the
Yeah.
seeing it with my eyeballs.
But on when you have a leap day in there, it's because the leap day is in February, it will move the date 1 day forward because of that, and then it will come back the next year. But that's just a minor thing. That isn't anything we need to worry about. You are right. We just count out the days. Sometimes there will be 6 waiting days, but there's usually only 5.
So it moves the Gregorian calendar date because of that added counting system, or the calendar itself that they have, a leap year, you know, being, you know, having a 29-day year and all that. That's just the way they did the calendar. So it looks calendar
Mario, every 4th year you have 366 days. There's 365 for 3 years, and then the 4th year it's 366, and that's because of the added 5.24 whatever days above the 360.